story because everyone treads a unique path and how to prevent comparing yourself to others. And we'll end with an interactions and question and answer session. So hi everyone, I'm Maida. I'm a junior at Thomas Jefferson High School for Science and Technology in Virginia. And I really love science, specifically neuroscience. I'm looking to go into medicine. In my free time, I love to read, write poetry, as well as sing and dance. Next, we have Ishita.
Hi everyone, I'm Ishita. As Jill and Auntie said, I'm a second year medical student in Edinburgh, which is in Scotland, which is in the UK, which is in Europe if we really want to be specific. What I like to do in my spare time is, if I have any, I really enjoy reading. I really like writing sometimes as well, and singing and dancing. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Ishita. Next, we have Ishan.
Hello, my name is Ishan. I recently started high school in Scotland, so that's grade 7 in the US. I like to swim and play the trumpet.
Thank you, Ishan. Next, we have Siddhi.
Hi, my name is Siri, and I'm a 9th grader at Lambert High School in Georgia. And in my free time, I like to sing, dance, and read. Thanks.
Thank you, Siddhi. Next, we have Pranav.
Hi, everybody. My name is Pranav Verkatel, and I'm a sophomore at Lambert High School in Georgia. And the things I do in spare time is play basketball, singing, and reading books.
Thank you, Pranav. Next, we have Ria.
Hi, everybody. My name is Ria. I'm a sophomore at Grand Blanc High School in Michigan. And in my free time, I really like to do Bharatanatyam and play tennis.
Thank you, Ria. Next, we have Anvita.
Hi everyone, my name is Anvita Tangella and I'm a guest speaker for today. In my free time, I like to do art, sketch, and swim.
Thank you, Anvita. And finally, we have Hasani.
Hi everyone, my name is Hasani and I'm in 7th grade and I go to Ruther Middle School. Some things I enjoy doing are playing tennis, doing dance, and hanging out with friends.
Thank you, Hasani. So now, since you have gotten to know all our panelists, we'll move on to the first topic for today, defining. So very simply put, your comfort zone is a space where your activities and behaviors fit a routine that minimizes stress and risk. There are lots of obvious benefits: regular happiness, reduced stress, and low anxiety. So now that we know what a comfort zone is in the proper definition, I want to tell you guys about a classic and one of the most important experiments in psychology. So back in 1908, two psychologists, Robert M. Yerkes and John D. Dodson, explained that a state of relative comfort created a steady level of Robert M. Yerkes and John D. Dodson explained that a state of relative comfort created a steady level of performance. Basically, in our comfort zone, we tend to improve much less and instead perform the same throughout. So what they hypothesized was that in order to maximize performance, we need a state of relative anxiety. And this is a space where our stress levels are slightly higher than normal. And this space is called optimal anxiety. This is just outside our comfort zone. The red zone over here is when there's too much anxiety, we're too stressed to be productive, and performance drops off sharply. So if you step out of this yellow zone, the comfort, and you're able to reach the blue zone, there are many benefits. There's a sense of unease and restlessness that comes with having deadlines and expectations. So if we don't have that, we lose the drive and ambition to do more and learn new things. So pushing your boundaries can help you hit your stride sooner and get more done. You'll also have a much easier time dealing with new and unexpected changes. There was an article in the New York Times where Ms. Brown, a research professor at the University of Houston, explains that one of the worst things we can do is pretend that fear and uncertainty don't exist. So by taking risks in a controlled fashion and challenging yourself to things that you normally wouldn't do, you usually can experience some of that uncertainty in a very manageable environment. And learning to live outside your comfort zone when you choose to can prep you for major changes in life that force you out of it. This is kind of related to what I just talked about. You'll find it much easier to push your boundaries in the future because once you start stepping out of your comfort zone, it gets a lot easier over time. And as you step out of your comfort zone, you'll become accustomed to that state of optimal anxiety. The scientific term for it is productive discomfort. That becomes very normal to you and you're willing to push further. And finally, you'll find it much easier to brainstorm and harness your creativity. This is a slightly softer benefit than the others we just went over, but it's pretty common knowledge and easily reproducible. Trying new things makes us reflect on our old ideas and beliefs and basically figure out where they clash with our new knowledge, which as a result inspires us to learn more and challenge the biases we already have in our head. Next, Ria will be talking about redefining failure. So too many times we feel that it's better not to fail than to even try, and there's a little bit of apprehension that holds us back. So hopefully by the end of this topic, Ria will have opened you up to the endless possibilities that come when we're not afraid to fail. On to you, Ria.
Okay, so let's redefine failure. When we think of failure, we usually think of the disappointment of not being good enough or not getting the results that we wanted. Many times, failure is seen as getting different results than everyone else or getting different results than what society expects you to get. So it's important to know that failure and success do not have the same meaning for everyone. We define our own failures and successes. A little example of how I came to know this was in math class. We were taking a geometry test and we had to prove a theorem. So after I took the test, I was discussing it with my friends and I realized that I had done something completely different than everyone else. So at this point, I had convinced myself that I got it wrong and flunked the test. But the next day, my teacher said something to me that changed my whole perspective and attitude. She came to me and said, "Good job solving the problem. You did it in a very creative way." And I realized that I had succeeded. I had just taken a different path than everyone else. So this is a very important point that can be applied in all of our lives. Everyone has a different path to success. So we are all unique individuals, and that's very important to understand. And we must remember that success does not mean getting what everyone else expects you to get. It's getting what you need to get. So we need to remember that you should not be afraid to get different results than everyone else, because even if you do, you did not fail. Just take the chance and try to succeed. This next slide is a quote by Theodore Roosevelt, which was one of our past presidents. It says, "It is hard to fail, but it is worse never to have tried to succeed." And I think this is really important because it's saying if we never accept the risk of failure, we will never have a chance to succeed. So now let's talk about how to redefine failure. One of the things we can do is to get rid of an all or nothing mentality. What this means is to get rid of our idea of extremes. There is no exact point of failure or success. Even if you don't get the results you wanted, you still get something out of the situation. So the only way to get better is through experience. Every time you attempt to better yourself, you are getting closer and closer to your goals, even if you don't get the results you wanted. Another thing we can do is to think of everything with a positive mindset. If we think of everything, if we change our mindset to be positive, we can take everything as a learning experience, and that is going to get us closer to our goals. And finally, we need to learn to fall forward. So whenever you don't get the result you wanted, just take a second to think about what you have learned. We must learn to fall forward. So what this means is to take every failure as something to help you get closer to your goal. So every time you fail, just use the opportunity to progress yourself. So now we can redefine failure as falling forward. It's important to remember that failure is not bad. There's no failing in life. There's only getting experience and learning how to be better. Finally, I just want to talk about this quote by Susie Kassem. It says, "Fear kills more dreams than failure ever will." And I think that this is very important because it's telling us that the only thing between us and our dreams is fear. So if we can learn to overcome that, we can achieve so much. And this is just a little reminder to everyone today to just go for it. Just take the first step towards your goals and do not let fear hold you back, because the worst thing that could happen is that you will fall forward.
Thank you, Ria. So what you said resonated with me, and I'm sure everyone else as well, especially because, especially when you said redefining failure as falling forward, because too often we believe that failing means falling behind and having to start all over again. So when you explained it, it's actually the opposite that's true. So thank you for highlighting that. And next we have Siddhi and Pranav, who will be talking about taking support from the right people.
When taking risks in your life, getting the right support can be very important. And this support can come from many places like friends, teachers, or parents. However, picking the right support among these sources is very important. You should always make sure that they have your best interests in mind and that they're encouraging you to take risks that will benefit you. Some risks are bad, while others can promote growth. You should know where and when to take a risk. Even if you're encouraged by peer pressure, stealing is definitely called a risk but won't provide any benefit to anyone. It's important to be surrounded by people who do not encourage such risks. Another source of support are books and influential people like CEOs or celebrities. They are people who did not settle for a normal job and chose to take a huge risk. Next, Pranav will be talking about these influential people and what we can all learn from them.
So, famous basketball players like LeBron James, Michael Jordan, and Kobe Bryant all had to take risks when coming to the NBA. They got support from their parents and other mentors that they looked up to. Playing in the NBA is a very risky career choice. You may get injured from the intense games, as many players do. Sometimes they might get fatigued in the game due to the intense training from their coaches, and sometimes they do not get enough rest. You might lose an influential game and lose income. However, basketball players take this risk to do what they love. Sometimes when other players get injured, they always try to hold their legacy and make their fans proud of them. Their coaches, parents, and teammates encouraged and supported their choices. While many people just saw them as talented or gifted, the risks that they took are also very important to their successful careers.
Next, we'll be talking about a quote by the basketball legend Kobe Bryant. And he said, "My parents are my backbone, still are. They're the only group that will support you if you score 0 or you score 40. Parents are a good source of the right support. You should have people in your life that won't put you down for your failure, but encourage you to continue to take risks. They will support you despite the outcome."
So thank you for sharing, Siri and Pranav. Before we talk a little bit more about that, Hasani has a couple points to say.
So adding on to Siri and Pranav, I had an example where I had to step out of my comfort zone, which was just joining these webinars. I had no interest in being a part of them or having anything to do with them, but then I had to give it a shot. So I tried, and I'm starting to become a little more comfortable with it step by step.
Thank you for sharing, Hasani. One of what sitting in front of what you guys said about your parents, because they only push you to take the risks that will benefit you in the long run. And something I believe personally is there's a little magic there because they just know what's good for you, even if it seems scary and impossible right now. And something else I wanted to mention was that you should always be aware and conscious about who you're listening to. I know you guys went over this peer pressure. So friends are beautiful, obviously, and they can help you live life in a way you never imagined for yourself if they're the right friends who truly want the best for you. But sometimes we do come across, some people try to pressure us into doing things and taking the wrong kind of risks. So it's important to be able to differentiate between who to listen to and take a risk and where to sit back, stay safe, and listen to your parents. So now we'll be talking about how to stop settling, practical tips that you can implement. So first, I'm a very staunch believer in no shortcuts because we've tried so many and lots of times they don't work out. So the most sustainable and effective way to approach things is through lifestyle changes. The first one is to every day do things differently. And it doesn't have to be something major. It can be as simple as when you go for a walk outside, take a different route, or maybe try a new restaurant without checking the reviews first. And all these small things, what they do is they tend to recalibrate your reality. And whether the change you make is large or small, by making changes in the way you do things on a day-to-day basis and looking for the perspective that comes from any change, even if it's negative. And one thing to keep in mind is don't be put off if things don't work out the way you planned, because that happens more often than not. So it's important to keep going. The next one is to take your time when you're making decisions. Sometimes slowing down is actually what makes you uncomfortable, especially if you're someone who's very quick at thinking, like has a lot of speed. So slowing down, observing what's going on, and taking your time to interpret what you see really helps, and then intervening. So it's important to think and not just react. And finally, do everything in small steps, because it takes a lot of courage to break out of your comfort zone, because it's something new, and doing anything new takes a lot of motivation and courage on your end. So you'll get the same benefits whether you go in with both your feet as you do if you start slow. So don't be afraid to start slow. Identify your fears and then face them step by step. Before I move on, there are actually lots of other ways to stretch your personal boundaries. You can learn a new language or skill. And I'm sure a lot of us know learning a new language has many benefits. Even connecting with people that inspire you, volunteering with an organization that does work you relate to. So the experiences that you have by trying all these new different things either can be mind-blowing or something you regret majorly, but that doesn't really matter, because the point is that you're doing it and you're pushing yourself past the mental blocks that tell you to do nothing. I just have a couple of habits of people who don't settle, very successful people of our time. The first most important one is when someone says it can't be done or that it's impossible, you should be the first one in line to test it out. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But first, pack your schedule. So most people, without even realizing it, especially at our age, in your teens or younger, or even slightly older, a lot of time slips out of our hands. I think usually 60 to 100 hours every week, because either we have too much downtime and we're not busy enough, or we have so many things to do and we don't schedule it properly. So scheduling every 30 minutes, filling it to the brim with things to do, and these can be things not necessarily homework or studying for something. It can be things that make you excited. It can even be sleeping. It can be watching a movie, learning something new. Just making sure writing everything down and packing your schedule full so that you're in control of your time and you're able to do what you're capable of. The next one, which I mentioned right before this, is to do things that no one else is willing to do. Test it, see if what they say is actually impossible, and if it is, make it work out somehow. Test it, see if what they say is actually impossible, and if it is, make it work out somehow. That gives you really vital skills in handling obstacles and never giving up. The next one is to learn much more. Again, not just by studying in school, but especially about yourself, how to improve yourself, how to expand on the skills that you already have. Basically, how to master all the different areas of your life. The last one I can relate to, and I'm sure not to pick on him, but my brother definitely would do good putting this to use. So first, read between 2 to 4 books a month. That's at least one every 2 weeks. If you have the time, one a week. There's so many books, so many different types of books. So just find one you love, pick it up, and start reading. And the next is to put down the remote. And obviously, having fun time with family, watching a movie, a TV show, playing a video game with your friends online, that's all fine. It's fun. And we need that stuff to socialize and have, because humans are social animals. But that shouldn't be the thing that occupies the majority of your time. The next one is to wake up earlier than everyone else. Because if you can wake up early, it shows that you're in control of your life. And something funny I heard quite a few times is that most mistakes, regrets, and bad decisions are made after 10 p.m. So going to bed early so you can wake up early and be able to use a little more of your day really helps. The next one is not surrendering on the things that you truly want. Something that requires a lot of acceptance is that things will get hard. So whatever it is and however impossible it seems, don't give up on it and don't settle for anything less than that. I saved this one for towards the end because this is something I struggle with majorly. Don't procrastinate. It ties into scheduling your day. So if something's on your to-do list, go ahead and do it now, no matter how tired you are, because it will just pile on And I'm speaking from experience because right now I have a lot of homework piled up for the weekend. And just thinking about it, I wish I could have gotten some of it done earlier this week. So as soon as you get assigned something, finish it off and don't procrastinate. The last one is the most important one. Being dreary, and if something goes wrong in our lives, we tend to spend lots of time moping over it. For example, in school, if you don't get a grade you want, you spend lots of time feeling bad. If only I'd done better on that test. So if you want to truly step out of your comfort zone, then force yourself to be ecstatic, even if you don't feel like it. First of all, let out the negative emotion, whether that's crying, talking to someone, and then decide to be excited because practice makes perfect. And even when you're down, if you cheer yourself up constantly, it becomes a habit. And you're eventually always enthusiastic, full of energy every day to finish what you have to do. So now that we've gone over a couple of the practical tips you can implement, Ishita will be sharing some of her personal experiences as well as additional tidbits of information.
Thank you, Medha. So I think I should probably explain this picture a little bit first. So in the background, you have the city that I live in, very beautiful, it's Edinburgh. And in the foreground, you have a photo of me just kind of in the kind of green space around my house. And there's a reason why I put this up, and I'll explain it a little bit more in a second, but the main kind of premise is not being afraid to go out and do what you want, whether that's something as simple as being confident enough to go outside with a massive DSLR and get your sister to take pictures of you for your Instagram. So if we move on, I'll explain a little bit more about this in a second, but to kind of explain to you guys a little bit about my personal experience, which I think many people can relate to. In primary school, I was kind of the kid that didn't really take it too seriously because it was primary school. And I think that in America might be elementary, so it's up till the age of 12-ish. So until 12, I kind of, I did well at school. It was fine. It wasn't too difficult. And because I excelled, like I kind of was put in the top grades and it seemed easy enough. And as I got through high school, things became harder and harder and I was still expected to succeed. So I was the kid that instead of staying up late to finish off work, I would wake up at 5 a.m. on the day that it was due. So I'm not some paragon of virtue, but I would wake up at 5 a.m. and I would do my homework instead of staying up late. And that's how I did my homework and stuff. And at that time, life felt very much do or die. So with my first kind of set of exams, as Ria said, it felt very much all or nothing, do or die. If I don't get a grade A in my exam, that's the end of it. What's the point in sitting at all? If I get a B, then that's synonymous with failure. And that's the way that I kind of approached life back then. And that's the way that I felt just because of kind of the way that I was set up and the kind of environment that I was in. But the thing is, in primary school and high school, I was surrounded by people who had all different kinds of ideas of success. So obviously people kind of would look at my grade A's and be like, why are you unhappy? Or they would, kind of compare themselves with me and I would compare myself with them. And it was kind of what felt like a dichotomy of like, other people might be aiming for passes, but I'm aiming for A's. And if I just get a pass, then that's not good enough. And that was really harmful for me. And it took me a while to understand that different aspirations are okay. I was very happy for everyone else who got their passes, but I was not happy with that for myself. And that really stressed me out. And I really struggled with that when I did end up failing exams and when I did end up failing tests. I didn't really have like a sense of self anymore. So then that kind of changed in the last year of high school and then in the first year of uni. So at university, I kind of really took it easy. So last year was my first year at university and it was very much not do or die. I took it very easy, did hardly any work at all. And conversely to what I did in primary school, waking up at 5 a.m. to do work, I probably did not see any sunrises that year at all. Woke up very late, sometimes would miss lectures. And I actually ended up doing my first all-nighter to finish off an essay and I just sat the whole night and did the essay, and then I woke up the next morning and had to go to anatomy, which was absolutely awful, and I will endeavour not to ever have to do that again. But the thing was, that really taught me something, and it was something really nice where I found out that I didn't have to be so do or die, and I didn't have to be like always aiming for the top grade, and I wasn't the top of the class, and very far from it, in fact, and that was absolutely okay, and I was perfectly fine with it, and it kind of just readjusted my mentality, and it made so much more sense. And that's really lovely. But now I've come to the realization that that's absolutely fine. And everyone has to kind of find out their own balance. So for me, it's somewhere in between where I was in primary and high school and where I am now in university, and somewhere like I would like to try a bit harder, because then I know that I'll feel better about myself regardless of the grades that I get, and that's the headspace that I'm in now. For me now, risk taking is all about trying and just taking the chance of actually giving it a go and not feeling like, oh, but if I didn't try, then it's okay because I didn't try and I failed anyway, rather than trying and failing. But realistically, you have to try. There's nothing left if you don't try, and that's something that I feel like I've learned. So I'd like to kind of close off this personal experience by talking about something a bit wider, which is kind of where you live. So on Twitter, I kind of saw a tweet that really resonated with me, and it said, oh, in Scotland, it's really, really awful because people will make fun of you for just about anything. If you're slightly unique, or you try and take a risk, or you try and be different in any sort of way, people will just absolutely rip you to shreds and make fun of you, and that's really disheartening. And it can feel like that sometimes, whether you're from a small town or whether you're from a place where people are very much one way and you might feel like a different way. But part of growing up, and part of even just living in general, is realizing where you are in that and trying to figure that out while you're growing up, and then working out what works for you, what doesn't really work for you, what you can maybe do a little bit but maybe don't want to live like, and being strong enough and being confident enough to do what you want to do wherever you live. So in my case, as a simple example, that was taking the risk of going outside and being seen by teenage boys with a DSLR and maybe being made fun of. But it was fine, and it was like I took that risk and I really enjoyed it, and it was a very fun experience. So moving on to something maybe a little bit less personal and things that I feel like I've learned. This kind of touches on what Ria's already told us, which is, what is failure? And failure to me now isn't getting a B in a test or even failing a test. Failure to me is failing to try and failing to take that risk of being vulnerable and putting in effort and not being self-protective. So I really feel like it's okay to make mistakes. And if you guys are kids, or even if you're not kids, like, just make those mistakes. Now's the time to do it so that you can learn from them later on. And it teaches you a lot more if you make a mistake in a test than if you actually get it right. That's one of the main ways that I found most useful to learning. The next thing that I feel like we should all try and do is ask ourselves realistically and reasonably, what's the worst thing that can actually happen? Unless it's a life or death situation, which it very rarely is, you should just go out and do it, or you should just plan to do it, and ask yourself why you're so worried. Because it's never do or die, as I've learned, and the worst that can happen usually isn't so bad. The next thing that I also feel like I've learned is very relevant, I feel like, for maybe Gen Z, maybe even millennials. But for many of us, we kind of get all these memes where it's like, oh, Gen Z can, talk about all of these political issues, but they can't go to a waiter and tell them that they got their order wrong. And it's not about being rude, it's not about being mean, but it's literally the idea of, you don't ask, you don't get. What's the worst that people can say? The worst that people can say is no. And that's really, and as soon as you kind of figure out that people saying no to you isn't such a bad thing, life becomes a lot easier and it becomes a lot less stressful. And the final thing that I really feel like I've understood and that I've learned is that you never know if you don't try. And again, the worst thing that they can say is no, or the worst thing that can happen is it doesn't go the way that you expected. And there's so many more opportunities to try again later. And that's the main thing that I think that I've learned. So I'd like to close off with a quote which used to really resonate with me. So I used to kind of have this up on my wall while I was doing my exams. And this would be something that really got me through, because I have massive dreams, like as big as the sky. And I used to really think, if I can dream it, then I can do it. Somehow it's going to happen. And if I want it enough, I really do think it will happen. And I think that childlike sense of wonder and that childlike sense of I can do it is something we should all try and carry with us for as long as we possibly can.
Oh my God, Ishita, I have so many things to say. So first, in the beginning, that picture you shared of yourself in the field, that was so beautiful. And especially what you said about waking up at 5 a.m. to do work. That's something. My alarm is set for 5 every day, and I end up hitting snooze until it turns to 8. So please let me know. And then also what you said about failure is not, failing on a test or being rejected for something, but actually failing to try. That's so true, and it really ties into what Ria said earlier. And especially this Walt Disney quote. So for me, I said before also, I really feel like there's like magic all around us. And if you want to do something, I know this is your favorite quote too. The universe conspires to help you, accomplish it. Right?
Yeah, definitely. So because we were discussing this earlier on, me and Megan, we were talking about how we desperately love this quote from a movie, a Hindi movie actually. It's got subtitles, and we thought we'd play a clip of that for you just to, bring back a bit of the magic. This is something that I watched as a 7-year-old, and it stuck with me for my whole life, and I really live by this, and I think we all should. So I won't spoil the quote. I'll let Shah Rukh Khan say it himself.
Yes. And there's subtitles for those of you who don't speak the language.
इतनी शिद्दत से मैंने तुम्हें पाने की कोशिश की है कि हर जर्रे ने मुझे तुमसे मिलाने की साजिश की है। कहते हैं अगर किसी चीज को दिल से चाहो तो पूरी कायनात उसे तुमसे मिलाने की कोशिश में लग जाती है।
So I hope you guys caught what he said at the very end there. If you want something, the whole universe conspires to help you achieve it. So that's one of our favorite quotes. And we just thought that'd be really nice to share, especially because it's also Ishita's one of her favorite movies. Okay. So now Ishan will be talking about, so far we've been talking about how personally we can take risks and how to implement it in our close surroundings. Ishan will be going on to the next step and talking about how companies take risks and how we can actually use some of those tips for ourselves.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about how risk applies in other areas of life and how we can apply these to our own lives. Firstly, I'd like to talk about how different companies and corporate organizations manage risk. Companies and businesses cannot operate without risk. You have to take risk when implementing new products and services and making decisions. Next slide. You can't have innovative and adaptive changes with no risk. So how do they justify making risky maneuvers? They use algorithms and banks use credit scores. They set aside in how much risk they can take. To give someone a loan, a mortgage, or even implement a new service, they will employ statisticians and risk managers to calculate and justify risk versus reward. They have to be good at assessing and taking calculated risks to operate. Mega, next slide. But an example of when they took too many risks to their detriment was in the 2008 crash. Multiple banks loaned too much money to people who couldn't pay it back and lost a lot of money, having a knock-on effect globally. Sometimes you can't plan events. For example, the COVID-19 pandemic has had a major effect on businesses. So how can we apply this to our own lives? Well, it's important to calculate for yourself how much you are willing to lose in exchange for how much you might possibly gain. This is fundamentally what we assess automatically when we decide how risky an action is. But sometimes it helps to make a decision if you write down pros and cons to help you decide. Write about and reflect on your experiences and make sure you check periodically to see if the risks you're taking are paying off, whether this is in the form of financial gain or happiness, learning a new skill, etc. If you're consistently getting hurt or you aren't happy with the results of your risk taking, you should reassess and make positive changes the way a good company or organization would.
Sorry, I was on mute. Thank you, Ishan. I really loved what you said, especially over here about how we can apply what all those big companies do to our real lives. And it's so important to reassess because sometimes things might not be going the way we hope they could go, and it's important to change things around if that happens. So right now, throughout the webinar, we've been talking about generally tips that we can implement, a couple personal details, but we haven't gotten too personal. So in this section, we'll be sharing some of our stories where we or our families took risks and either they ended up amazingly or they didn't end up so well. And we hope you'll be able to relate and take something away from it. First, we have Hasani.
Hi, so I'm going to be sharing one of my success stories. So a couple years ago, there was a Telugu International Spelling Bee where there were different levels like semifinals, finals, and internationals. So obviously my parents wanted me participating in it, which I was not interested in, and I did not want to do it at all. But if my parents were telling me to do it, then there was probably a good reason, but I still did not want to, but I ended up having to participate. So then I participated and studied that whole summer, and I came in 4th place. And I was sad because I spent so much work on it, and I didn't win. But I also felt really good that it was my first time and I got 4th place. So my parents encouraged me that saying, if it's your first time and you got 4th place, if you practiced way more and studied way more, then maybe you could get first. So then the next summer, I studied way more, as my parents told me to, and then I participated in it and I won it. I won that big trophy, as you could see, along with $1,116. So the main point that I'm trying to convey here is that to succeed, you have to take risks sometimes, whether they're big or not, and whether they're hard or not. But it's always worth a shot.
Thank you, Hasani. That picture is so adorable. I mean, I speak Telugu, but writing and reading is something I'm still working on, so that's really impressive. Before we move on, Anvita also has a story to share.
It's a small story, but like, it helped me a lot. So yeah. So when I was in 3rd grade 2 years ago, I was not interested in math like at all. Like I hated it. It was my least favorite subject. Like in school when we had like school, I didn't like really like want to pay attention, but like in order to pass tests I had to, so I did. But then one day we had we had a teacher that year, and my past teachers before 3rd grade didn't really like I did good in math, but like I didn't have the interest, so I just did did the problems like without interest, but like yeah. So then in 3rd grade I got a teacher, and she was really nice, and she was like every time any one of us had like a hard problem or something that we couldn't solve, she was like, you can ask me later and skip it. And so I had some hard time in math, and she like said like I'll help you later. And so we had like a table, and I sat with her for a few an hour or so, and she helped me like get all the concepts I need to know that year. And like I felt really good about it because like I got good scores on tests with my interest in math. So what I think is the moral behind this story is that like you need like support in order to take your risks. Like failure never comes with like risks. You can never succeed without another one person's support.
Thank you, Anvita. That's really impressive. And your story just goes on to show that if we stick with something and we get the right support, as you said, magic happens and it actually becomes really fun for us. Next, we have Ria.
Okay, so the risk I took is relatively, very small, but it's still a risk that I benefited from, so I thought I'd share it. Just recently, I was playing a tennis match, and I was at deuce in my game for the set, and all my tennis lovers know how crucial the point in deuce is. And if you don't, it's the point where both of the players are tied at 40-40. So at this point in the game, tensions are very high because all the players are trying their best and to ensure that they win the next point. And I knew that to win the next point, I would have to go above and beyond what I usually do. So just recently, I was learning a new slice serve, and I wasn't very confident in it yet. I wasn't sure if I could succeed and pull it off in a match. But then I thought about it, and I realized that the worst thing that could happen is that I lose a point. And the best thing that could happen is that I win and gain new confidence in my skills. So I decided that it was a risk worth taking. So in that point, I used my new serve, and not only did I get it in, I made it in on an ace. So after that, I realized that if I take risks, I can be rewarded by the outcomes. And even if I don't succeed by my own standards, I am still taking a small step towards my goals.
Thank you, Ria. So I don't know much about tennis. I played it for a couple months when I was in 1st grade. That doesn't really count, but that's really cool. And it goes on to show that risks are not only academic, but they can be applied to sports basically anything in our lives. Next, we have Pranav.
Okay, so from this quote, this is what I go by every day. Taking chances is one step close to success, but needs a lot of hard work. I would like to start talking about a risk that I am planning to take in the near future. So I really want to start to learn how to drive soon, and I'm aware that this involves a lot of risks, especially when learning. Though driving can be dangerous and therefore a risky action for myself and others, I know that it will be very useful and it provides independence, therefore benefiting me and those close to me once I learn. When I learn to drive, I'll do my best to reduce unnecessary risk by abiding by the rules and paying close attention. I'll have the support of my family and driving instructor to encourage me and help me when I make mistakes. So I started my first step towards taking this risk. So learning all road rules, and in a couple of months, I will be taking a riding test for driving. So if I didn't take this risk now, or if I don't get the right support, I'll never learn how to drive. So this and I have another story about me. So this year, my parents encouraged me to participate in a music competition. I participated and got to be a finalist in a national level and a regional level. If I had not taken the risk, I would not have reached at least that level. So taking risks will sometimes take us closer to our success path. And also, I always used to be like always on my iPad playing games, and I never like actually like came out of that. I think it started like in my 8th grade, where I was like, I want to take this music to a next level. So then I started doing it. I started practicing and listening to other great singers as well. So that's how, yeah.
Thank you, Pranav. I'm a singer as well, so I can definitely relate. If you take the risk. So the first time you perform on stage, it can be slightly nervous for everyone, but as soon as you keep doing it, then it becomes something that excites you and gives you adrenaline every time. Next, we have City.
Hi. So I'd like to talk about a risk that I took back in 6th grade. And I was pretty introverted and I was starting at a new middle school, so I was pretty scared to like step out of my comfort zone. But I chose to, and I joined a new club called HOSA, which helps students learn about some healthcare subjects. And it was in the middle of the year when the teacher announced a competition and a conference that you had to go and stay overnight. And I took this risk and I was pretty scared, but I studied hard for my competition and I won first place. And I feel like this event helped me learn that even if like as a 6th grader, I really didn't think I'd win or get a good ranking, but with my hard work, I managed to do this, and taking risks can pay off. And even if it might not seem like that in the first place, it might eventually pay off.
Thank you, City. Again, another example of how taking a risk or stepping out of your comfort zone will pay off definitely in the long run. And next we have Ishan.
A time when I was nervous was when I was doing my first Taekwondo competition, because most people there were quite competitive. I had never done it before and I could actually get hurt while sparring, which were all risks that I was subconsciously thinking about. Although I had never done it before, with that risk comes the idea that I might really enjoy this experience. Once I was actually there, I was having fun and not nervous anymore. I started to go to competitions more often after then, which goes to show how a risk can be for the better or worse. Another time I took a risk I was nervous about was when I signed up for a 50-mile cycle ride from Glasgow to Edinburgh that was coming up in about 3 months. I was either 10 or 11 years old. I didn't think I could do it as I struggled with quite short rides. I was using quite a small bike, which caused me to use a lot of energy for small actions. Luckily though, after the first ride of training, we quickly swapped the bike to a bigger one, which helped a lot. I continued to train with our group and got better all while I was enjoying myself. Soon enough, the big ride day had come. It was very hard at the start, but unexpectedly it got a little bit easier. I was very proud once I had finished and happy that I had joined in. So in conclusion, I took the risk and benefited from it. I'm lucky because so far I haven't regretted anything because my family convinced me to give things a try.
Thank you, Ishan. I can't imagine biking 50 miles, but that sounds really cool. And your parents must be really proud that you accomplished that. And next we have Ishita.
So I'm going to talk about a couple of different experiences, but I'd like to start off with talking about something very simple. So if you look at the picture, you can see a picture of me. I have no idea how old I am. Maybe I'm around 5 to 7. And beside me is a girl called Elena. So on my first day of primary school, I moved to a new primary school, and it was the first day of first grade, I suppose you could call it. And I walked right up to her because she seemed really nice. And I walked right up to her and I stuck my hand out and I said, "Hi, my name's Isha. Can we be friends?" And she was really sweet and she said, "Yeah, we can be friends." And that's actually written in our high school yearbook, and it said, "Oh, all those years ago when she walked up to me and said, 'Hi, can we be friends?'" And that's kind of the moral of the story. I'm still friends with Elena even now, even when she's in Glasgow, 50 miles away in a different city. This was taken 2 years ago. We don't have that many pictures together, but if we click on, we'll see a nice picture of when we went to the beach together at sunrise, which I managed to do for the first time in many years. And we went to the beach and we took some nice pictures together. And yeah, so the main reason why I'm telling you that story is because I want to kind of inspire you with the things that you did as a child that seem a bit ridiculous now maybe, or a little bit out of the blue, but something that you should definitely, keep in mind the spirit of, at least when you're kind of going about taking risks and doing actions, whether this is going over to someone new and saying hi as well. So moving on, and kind of also related to the pictures we were taking again, this is a picture of my baby brother, who is, as you can see, all grown up now. But I kind of want to talk about the theme of the support that you get from your families and the support that you can provide for your families. So with regards to this, if we click onto the next slide, or the next picture rather, this is a picture of me with Ishan. The next picture is with Pranav and Siri. So if you look at the boy in the brown top, that's Pranav. The girl in the green jacket is Siri, and the other little girl is my sister. And you can see me as I'm the tallest out of all of them. So as the oldest, at least on my mum's side, and as the eldest in my own family, I've always felt a bit of responsibility to take some risks and to kind of hold myself as an example. So one of the examples that I can say of when more kind of continuing with taking a risk is, just taking pictures, stopping randomly, looking like a bit of an idiot with your phone, taking pictures of a random flower, for example, which you'll see in the next picture. And felt like a bit of an idiot when I paused and took a picture, but it made me happy, and that's what counts. And the next picture after that, I believe, is again me taking pictures of Ishan. So the reason why I've put those two pictures is because it's with the whole theme of, okay, so I've decided that I now want to take pictures of random things, and because I've done that, now I can try and persuade Ishan into doing that as well, and now he has the confidence to walk around with me and get his picture taken, which is very exciting. And the next picture will show you something a bit more, maybe a bit bigger. So with my siblings and with my cousins and even with people in this webinar, it's really nice to watch each other and be inspired by the risks that other people take, and by hearing what everyone else is doing. I think that's really inspirational. So this is a picture of me last semester at university doing something that I really love, and I hope that inspires my cousins to kind of, and even you guys, to kind of go out and do something that you really enjoy as well. So the main thing that I want to kind of put across is the idea that by doing something that we really enjoy, we can inspire the people around us and they can inspire us. I'd also like to share the story of when I've shared this with some of you guys already, but the story of when I was waiting to go on a flume in Disney Blizzard Beach, and the flume or the water slide or whatever it is, it was basically vertical. So it was slightly terrifying. And I'm fine with roller coasters because roller coasters, you have a harness, but I could see people going down the slide and it looked like they were about to fly off of it. And I saw people like actually lose contact with the slide. So I was a bit concerned and a bit scared. So we went up to the top and I kind of thought, you know what, I think I'll chicken out and I think I'll bail on this and maybe just make the shameful walk back down to the bottom. And I'm standing there beside my cousin Siri, who's all grown up now and no longer the little girl in the green jacket. But I asked her and I was like, oh, are you going on this slide? And my whole family's planning on going. And Siri's like, yeah, I think I'll go. And she sounds so chill and so cool about it that I was like, you know what, as her older cousin, I feel like I have to now. Like I can't not do it now. And so not just me inspiring people as the eldest, but my cousins constantly inspire me, Pranav with his competitions, and even everyone in this webinar. I think it's really cool to hear what everyone else is doing and really important to take those risks.
Thank you, Ishita. So I just wanted to say, all these pictures show that risks don't have to be something big and scary. You know, like whether it's going up and trying to say hi to someone new, you end up making a friend, like a lifelong friend. Or whether it's getting on the water slide. I have an irrational fear for roller coasters, so I can definitely relate to that. I'll go really quickly so we have a little bit of time for Q&A before we have to wrap up. So a risk, maybe not necessarily me, but my family took was moving to New Jersey when I was going from 5th grade to 6th grade. So that was 2015. The summer of 2015 we moved. And I've lived in Virginia almost my entire life. So I was sobbing, as you can imagine, and my friends had thrown me a huge farewell party, and I was crying that entire night. The night they threw me the party and we were about to move, because my entire life was back here, and I was wondering how it'd be just moving somewhere else. So once we got to New Jersey, it was actually one of the most beautiful years of my life. We stayed there for just about a year before we moved back. We caught up with family we hadn't seen in a while. I made so many really, really beautiful friends, most of who I'm still in touch with now. So just that whole experience and visiting so many different places while we were there, going on vacation, falling off Niagara Falls in a barrel, as you can see, all of these were really beautiful experiences that shows, no matter how big or small the risk is, it's always, not always, usually turns out to be good for you. I think it's time to wrap up, but maybe we can do a couple questions. Let me stop. Okay, so the first question is, why do we associate risk with a negative connotation and challenge with the positive one? Because when we think of challenge, we think of motivation and hard work. But when we think of risk, we think of something that can harm you. And since these days people use these words interchangeably, what's the difference between the two? Anyone can just take it up.
Well, I'd be more open to a challenge. I feel like with a challenge, risks are involved, but there's more of a chance of success. So
yeah, I agree. I feel like the terms are used interchangeably, but they're not really the same thing. A risk is something that might end up happening, it might not end up happening, but the risk in and of itself is usually a bad thing or something negative that you don't want to happen. Whereas a challenge usually means something that's difficult to do, but might give you some good rewards, potentially if you do it. So I think it's good to take risks, but taking the risks, like there's obviously two different meanings for risk. So there's a risk where it's definitely a bad thing, and there's a risk where it could be a good thing. So yeah, I think it just depends on your own worldview as well, to be honest. If you're a risk taker, you probably don't view it as a bad thing.
Yeah, definitely. So my 2 cents is that I feel like risks provide opportunities and challenges, because I feel like risk is a big umbrella that covers opportunities, challenges, easier things. So I feel like it's more unfamiliar than challenges are. Does anyone else have anything to add, or do you guys want to move on? Okay, we'll move on. So the next question is, when should you go with your intuitions and take the risk? And when should you rethink and take your time and maybe decide against taking that risk?
So I feel like intuition's a really powerful thing. Innately, you'll have enough life experience that your brain will automatically recognize, like if something's bad or if something's good. So I think, again, what Ishan was probably going to say is, if you're like worried Like if you're really, really worried, then maybe write down, like a plan of why it could be good, why it could be bad. But otherwise, if you feel like it's a good thing, then go for it, provided it's not a life and death situation, and, plan and prepare with regards to that.
Yeah, anyone else? Ria, you have anything to add for that one?
I was thinking maybe you could calculate a risk to reward ratio or something like that and see what the possible outcomes are. And then if you really like one of the outcomes, no matter how small of a chance you have, I think as long as you're not risking too much, it's always a good idea to just go for it, because if you're not risking too much, there's nothing to lose. So just go for it.
Yeah, definitely. I'm someone who usually does not trust my intuition, so it's important. I did a quick Google search and I found out that it's a trusted psychology website. It says intuition is based on years of experience. So we have a misconception that it's a spur of the moment decision your mind tells you to make, which is why so many of us kind of say, no, don't listen to your intuition sometimes. But our subconscious is actually really powerful and it tells you to make a decision based on past decisions and experiences. So I think it's important to trust your gut when you have experience in making a judgment. Okay, it's already past 5, so we'll do one last one. So what's your favorite quote about risk-taking and why does it speak to us? Anyone?
My favorite quote would be, "The secret of getting ahead is getting started," because I'm quite a procrastinator just with homework. I'm just a little bit lazy, so yeah, I just like to think about that.
I procrastinate, so it's
A
fine.
quote.
Yeah.
I think Albert Einstein said this quote actually. Anyone who has never made a mistake has never tried anything new. So I think mistakes are important in in how you succeed. Like it's a process. Mistakes are important in in how you succeed. Like it's a process of how you can take the steps to succeed.
Yeah, definitely. I really love that quote as well. Siti and Pranav, do you guys have one?
A quote that I really like is "Take the risk or lose the chance," and I feel like this quote, it can apply to your life, because whenever you want to do something but you don't do it, you might feel regret it, and basically you're losing the chance to take that risk. And rather than thinking about it after the fact, just go ahead and take the risk. If the stakes are not too high, nothing bad can happen. So
Yeah, definitely. Pranav, you have anything to add? It's okay. Ria, do you have one? I'm just trying to go in a circle so we cover everyone.
One of my favorite, my most favorite quote ever is, "Everything you've ever wanted is on the other side of fear." And I used to write this on sticky notes and put it all over my room. I used to write it on myself. I was obsessed with this quote. But I think it was just really nice because it reminded me that if I can just, get over that fear, I can unlock so much potential. And I think that's really cool.
Yeah, definitely. I think we've re-emphasized many times in today's webinar that fear, I feel like if you get over fear, you can pretty much do anything, like you said. Hasani, do you have anything?
I don't have a quote, but for the question before, adding on to Ishita and Ria, if you don't know if it's good or not, you can always take support from someone, as you guys talked about in the slides.
Yeah, definitely. Taking the right support is always important because it just helps. So now I think sorry about that. Now I think we've covered everyone. And my favorite quote, we'll end with that. So because it ties back to what we started with. I already said, take chances, make mistakes, and get messy by Miss Frizzle. So a bit of context behind that. Miss Frizzle is a teacher from a children's show, The Magic School Bus. And that was one of my all-time favorite shows because the Magic School Bus is a school bus that shrinks or expands, and it can fly to outer space. It can fly inside our bodies, and it's animated to tell us so much more about science and the way the universe works. So besides being obsessed with the show, I really, really loved Miss Frizzle. because almost everything she did was not reckless, but really, really daring. And I think it's important to at least implement a bit of Miss Frizzle in all of us. So there's no guarantees in life. So I feel like a much better to approach to things, whether at this stage or when we're older, is to loosen our grip a bit and take some chances. And also the quote says it's okay to make mistakes. So that's another reason I love it. So I think that's all for today. I think, yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Medha. And trust me, I took this advice of yours very literally, and I did make a mistake in the beginning itself, that I forgot to introduce Ria, who is with us for the first time. So, but I can think I get out of it just because that we can make mistakes. And sorry, Ria, about that. But yes, Ria was a first timer here today, but she got engaged and involved in the team so well that it didn't even feel like that she's here for the first time, or she's a 10th grader and from Michigan. And thank you, Ria, for those valuable inputs. And also we had our guest speaker, Anvita, who is fifth grader. So absolutely mind-blowing presentation, if I would say. Each time it amazes me, and I hope that it has made some difference to someone out there listening today. So any more questions, or did we have anything from YouTube or Facebook, or did you cover it all?
I think we covered it all. We had a couple more questions, but they were pretty much things we've already covered in the presentation.
Okay, so absolutely so true that there is always this strange comfortness that whatever you said, that what boils down, and I feel that it's very easy and to get into that comfort zone, in knowing that no matter what happens today, there will be a tomorrow, there will be a sunrise. To get out of that comfort zone is all that makes the difference. So with that, I'll just let you all know. Definitely thank you, youth, for your time, for having us a week of school. With that, spending those valuable times for brainstorming, doing it all by yourself, and like on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, we all do it together. So if anyone joining in today as attendee, if you want to be part of these webinars, you can also email us at webinar@LetUsTalkIt. And it is a good learning point, a good skill that your kids can start early. So with that, we would like to let you know that these Let Us Talk It webinars, we have it every week. And next week, again, as this week, we will have mind-blowing webinars. On Tuesday, we have the topic Time to Think Big. Problems cannot be solved by the same level of thinking that created them. It's Einstein's quote, very true. And on Wednesday, we have digital analytics and the art of storytelling. And on Thursday, we have I am not creative, a self-limiting belief people have and how to beat it. And after this webinar, anybody who wants to be part of next week or give suggestion for the topic next week, please join this Zoom link here, and we will discuss it after we get offline, or out of the live session. So thank you all the attendees who have joined in today, and thank you, youth, once again. You did a terrific job, and we love you so much from all of us from Let Us Talk It team. And with that, we end this session and have a wonderful weekend ahead. Thank you.